back and forth.
Sure.
All right, guys. Hey, everybody. We're live this morning. Super excited here from the lab here in my home office. But we have a great guest this morning. It's Mr. Alex Pate of yourpropertyadjuster.com. I'll let you give him a little more on his background, but I've come to know Alex. He actually lives in Southwest Florida in one of the hardest hit areas. And a lot of public adjusters and a lot of people in general, when they see flood claims, they're not chomping at the bit to help. There's a lot of nuances, there's some risks, some other stuff. But Alex is devoted, a lot of time since the storm hit. We've been talking, keeping in close touch. He spent a lot of time digging in, learning, building processes and systems to help his friends, neighbors, and the community rebuild from these flood damage claims. So with that stage being set, Alex, welcome. And can you tell us just real briefly about yourself?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the introduction, Daniel. Sure. Yeah. My name's Alex Pate. I'm with Your Property Adjuster. We're a public adjusting firm here in Indian Rocks Beach, Bel Air, Clearwater area. Been doing public adjusting for about 6 years now. We have our own firm, boutique firm. 5 of us here. PAs. We service the whole state of Florida. We're licensed in Florida and no other states at the moment. We might do some branching out here next year into other states like Ohio, Kentucky, places like that. But we've really been focusing on flood. Our area was hit big time with flood. We weren't really the flood adjuster or the flood PA before the storm. We've kind of learned a lot. With this storm, Hurricane Helene hitting in our backyard, flooding all of our coastal beaches from Indian Rocks Beach down to St. Pete Beach, Siesta Key, even places that I've grown up in. I've lived my whole entire life. So we've learned a lot by servicing some of our family. A lot of these people are all our family members, friends of family. So we're doing a lot of flood stuff, and we're also doing wind claims as well.
Oh, that's great. And let me ask you, first and foremost, you're right there in the hot zone. Did you suffer flood losses at your home or office?
I did not.
Okay.
We got lucky. My home in Bel Air is about 40 feet above sea level. Luckily, our office in Bel Air is like 50 feet above sea level. So we got lucky. We had some tree branches fall down, but we lost power for a week at the house. So we camped out at the office for a week. But we're pretty fortunate.
Yeah, and so certainly happy to hear that for you. And it's interesting, the topography of Florida. How some areas are so low lying, and then maybe just a few blocks away, you're kind of coming up. You don't notice the hills; everything looks flat.
Yeah.
But certainly happy to hear it worked out. That where you just kind of lost power for you. I saw it looked like you were doing some like barbecues and kind of getting the community together and offering some food and stuff.
Yeah, we were at the office. I brought the Blackstone from the house. This was like Fort Knox over here. We had all my deep freezer stuff. So we were cooking cooking steaks and cooking whatever we had in the freezer. We were cooking up for there's some other people that were staying in the office complex that we stay in. So we were cooking for them. We had the kids running around and kind of passing out business cards and just trying to help the community.
Cool. Now you love to hear it, man. And that's, I think it's, pretty special when you've got people with the resources in the local community who can serve and help that community. Obviously, following catastrophic events, you get a lot of people who come down to help, which is good. It's not a bad thing. But I think it's something special when it's actually your community. You're there for the long term. You've been doing this for 6 years, you said, and I know you got really good aspirations, and you want to grow and you want to build just a great organization that's going to stand the test of time and continue to serve that community. So that's awesome, Alex. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you real quick. So this is what obviously you and I are good friends. We're always in touch, but most of these questions that I'm getting feedback, a lot of it's around flood. And I think where we're at in the process of, the whole storm is, the catastrophic event comes through, everyone's shell shocked, everyone's working, we're trying to get adjusters out. Maybe that first flood adjuster's coming out. Where are we at in that process, in your estimation, in terms of people getting back either initial estimates or initial payments? Have you seen people getting these payments?
Yeah, I've seen, it's a good question. I've seen people and I've talked to, I think we signed 62 flood files since the storm. And people are starting to get checks. I'd say I'd say maybe 10% of our files have gotten paid. And
Great.
everybody's gotten advance payments. If you put in for advance payment requests, typically those have gotten paid. A few
Cool.
weeks ago. So what I've heard from the flood adjusters that they typically they'll write an advance payment for about 25% of the value that they think that the claim's worth. So if it's $100,000 claim, they'll write an advance around 25,000.
That's great. And
if they think
yeah,
that.
is that money, does that need to be apportioned to fixing the home right away? Or is that money that people can spend for their out-of-pocket expenses or living expenses? Or is this money that they have to spend to repair?
Yeah, no, they could take that money and they could pay their invoices, for the mitigation companies. They could, the out of pocket expenses that they've had to whatever that is. They use that money for whatever they feel that they need to rebuild the house or put the house back in where pre-loss condition.
Yeah, that's terrific, because I mean that's going to give people at least a little jingle, walk around money, right? Shit, I mean a quarter of what you're owed. It's not getting you back. You're probably not doing your permanent repairs, but certainly a lot of people, especially if you're displaced, that money can go towards alleviating that financial burden. So that's terrific. And in terms of that, is that something that you're seeing unrepresented homeowners? If are they getting those payments too, or is that something that people who work with you, where you're proactively preparing and moving this forward, they're the ones who are getting the benefit of that?
I see it more and more, like if people are working with a public adjuster, that they're getting that, or if they work with, if their flood adjuster is up to speed, or if they know what they're doing, they'll offer that at the time that they meet. They'll say, hey, fill out this advance payment request form. But I mean, I've seen maybe 20% of them do that, up front.
Okay, wow.
A lot of the homeowners didn't even know that they can get an advance payment, So if you don't, this is
Wow.
something, if you don't know about, you're not
don't
really entitled to.
Well, and that's kind of been the theme of, what I've been jumping on. I know you've watched some of these videos I'm doing, and I appreciate you supporting me through the process. But like, that's one of the themes is first you need to empower yourself with the knowledge of knowing what to do. And then you need to be proactive and do it. And then the third step is holding them accountable. Just because you tell them to do something doesn't mean they're going to rush and do it. These are big bureaucracies, and they do have financial incentives that are pretty much adversarial to that insured. So this is another reason it makes sense to get with someone if you're not the type of homeowner, commercial property owner that can investigate and figure out everything that's damaged and figure out the process, and then be proactive in submitting in that presentation stage, second step of the Tiger system, and then holding them accountable, right, for the time periods. This is the sort of thing where people probably should avail themselves of a professional. And I would imagine, obviously there's no way to split test it, but people who are working with your firm, Alex, they're getting, almost all of them, I'm sure, are probably getting an advance payment. And then they're also understanding what they're actually owed. So maybe we could jump into the process. So if someone has a flood claim, and certainly they've filed it at this point, if you got a serious flood claim, you had damage. Some people, I spoke to a gentleman this morning, I actually ended up connecting him with a guy from Clearwater, and he's a roofing contractor. So he knows this general process. But the question I asked everyone, I said, well, how much do they owe you? And he was like, I have no idea. So in regards to your process, how does this process start?
So that starts with, I mean, as far as like, estimating the loss, right? I mean, that's the number one question is the homeowners don't know what it's going to cost to rebuild, to pre-loss condition, right? So they're relying on the flood adjusters to do that for them, right? And it's just like anything else. If you go to a doctor, you always want a second opinion. So a lot of times, what we would like to see is people work with us at the beginning of the claim, so we can take control of the claim. I always say, when you're working, when you have an insurance loss, you want to take control of the claim, whether you're doing it on your own or whether, you have professional help to do it with you. Don't let the insurance carrier take control of the claim, because they're going to dictate what they owe you. They're going to dictate the time frame that they're going to pay you. They're going to dictate, the communication, that they're going to, correlate with you regarding the claim. So I always say take control of the claim now. A lot of times if you wait, to hire a public adjuster, it's only going to stretch things out time wise. If you work with a public adjuster to begin with, at the very beginning, we're going to write the estimate for you. We're going to review the estimate that the flood adjuster writes. We're going to compare the two. Flood's a lot different than wind, where we actually have a relationship with the flood adjuster. Like once we write our estimate, we don't deal with the carrier as much as we would with like a wind claim. We would go right back to the flood adjuster and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Flood Adjuster, this is what we came up with. What do you have on your estimate before we even go to the carrier? And we work with them. We have a relationship with them. And these flood adjusters, they're experienced. They're experienced adjusters. They know what they're doing. Unlike with a wind adjuster, where it's just somebody from out of town coming here to write something up.
Some knucklehead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So listen, let me unpack some of that, because that was some really good and important stuff. So, the first step, and we use our Tiger process, of course, Tiger system, but you have to investigate. We're the ones submitting the claim, right? Whether you're a homeowner, an adjuster, an attorney, the burden of proof of creating the claim and proving the claim is going to be on us. And people mistakenly think that they can outsource that to the party that owes them money. And to me, it just shows kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of how to run this process effectively, which is why I always start with the first question, how much are you owed? And that's a bit of a rhetorical question, because a lot of times people answer, they go, I don't know. And I say, well, how can you expect to get paid what you're owed if you don't know what you're owed? So I love where you're starting off with that process. And one of the things too that I think makes a lot of sense is, let me ask you the question, do you charge different fees if they bring you in early versus if you have to unpack everything at the end and they already messed it all up?
No, our fee's pretty cut. It's regulated at the 10%. We charge 10% whether they bring us in now, 10% whether they bring us in, after they receive the first payment. I will say, what I've seen in the past from Hurricane Ian, it takes a year, 18 months to get a second payment, to supplement on flood, with the NFIP program, so if, that's the thing, it's a waiting game, you can bring in professional help, but we're going to write our estimate and, compare it to theirs, but it's going to take another year for a supplement for them to even write another check, which stinks.
So, so if you present it correctly the first time, does it cut down on how many people have to wait and then supplement?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
And so for 10%, you're going to come in and investigate the loss, prep the estimates, handle the communication. That person can go on with their life. It seems like a prudent choice to me for people who maybe aren't construction or insurance experts, especially considering the time value and the frustration that can be caused. So that seems like terrific advice to me is, get in with an expert early. Obviously you do see some people who want to wait and they say, well, if I wait, I may not have to pay a professional fee on some portion. But if these early payments are coming out so small and now you have to fight uphill to get what you're really owed, everyone has to do their own math, and figure out what their time's worth, what their frustration situation is worth. But that seems to me to be prudent. And Alex too, can you touch on, I know there's specific requirements for flood insurance claims that they need to file a document and they have a certain amount of time to do that. Can you walk us through that very quickly?
Yeah. So with flood claims, you have 60 days, to file and report the claim from the date of loss, or from the time that you report the claim. You got to submit the sworn statement proof of loss, the FEMA compliant sworn statement proof of loss, it's a 2-page document. The first document is just your name, the dollar amount that you feel like you're owed. And then, who prepared the estimate, whether you prepared it yourself or you had professional help, and if you have invoices or receipts to go along with that. But you have 60 days to report that. But I think they just increased that another 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that now you have 90 days for Helene and 90 days for Hurricane Milton to prepare that document. And if you don't, what happens if you don't prepare that? Then they're just going to tell you what they owe you. rather than, the ball being in our court, and you presenting the claim and you telling them what they believe they owe you. They're just gonna write you a check for what they believe that they owe you.
And I can't imagine that's the best way to handle this process.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
So it's certainly important to realize that you do have some time pressure here. And with the flood claim proof of loss, in a windstorm claim, your proof of loss may be dictated by the carrier's requirements or their requests. And generally speaking, that's a more general proof of loss document. My understanding, and I'd love to hear your experience with this, is the FEMA's proof of loss for flood claims. It's really like your entire case, right? They need all the evidence, the photos, the estimate, and all of your invoices. That really, they want to see your whole case in 60 days. It's not just, hey, I'm owed this much, here's what happened, let's figure it out, right?
Correct. You're correct. They're going to want to see the photo documentation. They're going to want to see the water line. They're going to want to see all your measurements and schematics of the building, square footage, linear foot. They want to see, a full estimate written, line by line item with an exactimate. They want to see, if the contents. I mean, contents is a thing too. I mean, they won't pay for any content. If you had socks in a drawer and you don't have pictures of socks in a drawer, they're not going to pay for the socks in the drawer. So you have to document even after the fact. I've had some cases where, it's Airbnb, and we have before photos of all the furniture that's in the place. But if you don't have the photos of the documentation of the furniture being ruined, they're not going to pay for it. Or they
Wow.
say that they won't pay for it. So you have to have good documentation. Sometimes these adjusters don't arrive for 2 weeks, and everything's pulled out. So if you, the homeowner, don't have pictures of what was in the drawers, or linens or sheets or bedding and all that, if you don't have pictures of it, you might say that you had it, but they're not. If you don't have documentation of it, they won't pay it.
Yeah, and that to me goes back to 2 points. The first one is that the claim, it's our burden of proof, right? We're asking them for money. We have to substantiate what we're owed it for, what's the basis of it. We have to put that claim together the right way. And unfortunately, a lot of people just say, oh, it's a claim, I call it in, they'll take care of it. And those people find themselves in a tough position. The second thing that brings up for me is the importance of following, kind of like the general advice we always give, is if you suffer a property damage loss, or that hurricane's on the way, or potential flood events on the way, or whatever it is, before, during, and after documentation, right? We say walk through with your camera, make sure you're getting a video 3 times so that you're getting everything you need before, during, if necessary, possible, and then certainly after. We want to see that same documentation. And if you do it exactly that way, if you do the befores, walking through with your video camera throughout your entire house, spending time on maybe more expensive or more intricate areas, you do it before the storm, then you do it after the storm, you're in pretty good shape in terms of the photo and visual documentation you need before you start ripping stuff out and doing that emergency mitigation stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's great advice. Always, before the storm, take your photos or videos. During the storm, if there's a leak, you see a leak or something, take a quick 30-second video of the leak. And then after the storm, the aftermath of the storm. That's all relevant. That's all good data.
Yep.
To present a claim.
And it's free. It's easy. It's free. Worst case, I do it every storm season. I go back and I delete a bunch of videos of me walking through my house, or I keep one, just in case something comes up. So,
Yep.
these are all, good tips. And again, the nice thing about working with an expert like Alex or with us or whoever you're working with is people who've done this a lot, have educated and built processes to do it and make sure they're doing it the right way. This ain't our first proverbial rodeo, right? So, if you follow the advice that we're giving consistently, you're going to be in the best position you can to make the best recovery under the facts and circumstances, under the policies and coverages you have, with the evidence that you have. So just putting yourself in that right position. One of the things that I saw, Alex, too, I want to pick your brain on is we unfortunately had a client approach us who has a flood loss from Hurricane Ian on Captiva Island, beautiful multi-million-dollar estate. We're doing his wind claim, roofs, windows, doors, fenestration, exterior, siding. I mean, big claim. And he said, Dan, can you help me with my flood claim? So you guys are doing a great job. I know you only do bigger stuff. And, I think it's maybe 200 grand. I said, well, it's big enough. Don't worry. But, he brought it. And I'm like, listen, man, I reviewed it. Unfortunately, they worked with a public adjuster, not you, but another guy who recommended some other, Bobo lawyer who knows, the guy is now a premier property damage attorney. I mean, these guys are springing up all over the place, probably similar to PAs, I'm sure. So you got to go with the real deal. But basically what happened was he brought it to me now. Alex, we might have lost you, buddy. But he brought me this claim and he said, Dan, can you help me? And I reviewed it. And unfortunately, based on the timelines for these flood claims, we're not able to help him because the timeline in which we could file a lawsuit had run. And that timeline, I was going to dive in with Alex. He looks like he's dropped off here. So I'll just kind of, I guess, get to the point I was going to ask him about. But you've got a 1 year deadline to file a lawsuit. That's 1 year from that denial determination. So time is really of the essence on these claims. And, from the start, from the documentation, it's important that you act urgently and promptly to document thoroughly, number one. Number two is organizing your evidence, preparing a proof of loss, and submitting it within 60 days. So that's timeline number two, which is an issue. And it looks like Alex, unfortunately, disconnected one way or another here. We'll see if we can get him back on. And if not, I'll tie it all up. So, where we're at is, there's Alex. All right, let me add him back in the studio, baby. All right, you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, cool. So I was just doing a quick little monologue there. I'm beating the same drum, but just about time periods and the importance of acting urgently and staying in these time periods, because these are one-way doors, right? And if you walk out the door, if you miss the timeline, you can't go back. So that's one of the other things that's so important about working with a skilled, experienced public adjuster, making sure you're documenting correctly, making sure you're preparing that evidence package, getting it in with your proof of loss timely, right? And then finally, if you do hit that wall with that denial, you have just 1 year to file a lawsuit to really try to overturn that denial. If you, like this gentleman who came to me, one of my clients on a windstorm claim, came to me with the flood claim, and he said, well, you helped on the windstorm. Why can't you do this? And I said, the deadlines are different. It's different coverage, different law. The deadlines are different. And he was very disappointed and frankly pretty upset with, the professional he used. So, to that point, Alex, what are some of the tools or some of the tricks that you guys use at your property adjuster that set you guys apart and differentiate you guys in terms of keeping timeline and organization?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it all starts with, the first adjuster meeting. When you're meeting that adjuster, obviously, you want to befriend that guy a little bit. You want to point out the things that should be covered in that like for me, I review the policy. I know the coverage. So it starts with that first meeting, because that is your liaison to the claim. That's a guy that's he's speaking for the other side. So in sense of timelines, I always like to start the beginning of the claim at the adjuster meeting, right? Obviously you take pictures of the damage at the time it happened, but the claim really starts for me at the time that I'm presenting it, to the adjuster. So once I'm presenting the claim to him, I'm pointing things out. I'm making notes, on what to write on my estimate, because a lot of times I won't have the estimate prepared. But I'm also telling him, like, hey, this roof, you can't replace it because you're not going to be able to match the tiles. You're not going to be able to match the shingles, or the homeowners association is not going to allow that. I'm kind of putting things in his ear to make him buy the bigger picture, or if there's if the door jam, if the sliding glass door is not working, properly, I'll show him right there. I'm like, look, you can't, the door's not working properly. And I know the question was in sense of timelines go, but I always start the beginning of the claim, at the adjuster meeting. I feel like, from there, and then I give them a week, 10 days before I follow up from that point to see if they have their estimate prepared. Typically, 10 days I'll follow up. If they have their estimate prepared, we'll review it together. And then that takes another 10 days, for the desk adjuster to get their estimate and actually have time to review it. So on a windstorm, you know, I can typically settle a file within 10, you know, I'm sorry, within 30 to 45 days, you know,
Wow.
on the wind,
That's
you know,
and that's assuming the adjusters are intending to do the right thing and are working promptly in tandem with you.
exactly. And it typically, you know, on the wake of a storm, that's not realistic. In the wake of a storm, it's, you know, you know, it's probably 3 months, you know, because
Yeah.
they're bogged down. I know during Ian, it was crazy. One day we would have Shanika as a desk adjuster, and then 3 days later we would have Shawanda as a desk adjuster, and you know they really didn't know what they were doing. That none of them had experience in building, you know, Florida building code. None of them had experience in roofing. None of them, you know, knew what, you know, they were just pushing paper.
Well, and to
So it
that
takes
to
longer.
well, and to that point too, if we're talking about, we're trying to get our restoration project handled correctly by someone who's untrained and doesn't know how to do it correctly, that to me underscores the importance of having an expert, whether it's an adjuster, a lawyer, or a roofing contractor, or general contractor, but someone who's your expert, because if they don't know how to do it right and you don't know how to do it right, guess what? It's unlikely to get done right. So to
Correct.
me, if they don't have trained people, if you're relying on them to handle this process for you, but you know that they're not capable or equipped, to handle this process, that makes it even more important that you're handling the process the right way, that you're engaging with Alex and his team or whoever you're choosing to work with so that they can be the experts for you. They can hold those timelines. They can follow up, every 10 days or whatever it may be. And to that point, Alex, so I know you're systems based, which any good business person is. And I've seen, you and I had a nice discussion yesterday too about these flood claims, how you want to stay organized. Can you talk about just the way you approach the systems and how you document these files?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. So, you know, we use a CRM system that gives us, you know, macros or not macros, but like triggers. So, you know, after we submit our sworn statement proof of loss, you know, we 30 days later we follow up, you know, because they have 30 days to respond
Mhm.
to it. Um, so we use a CRM called Claim Wizard, to where anytime that we send an email to, you know, the client, or even to, you know, someone that's going to perhaps write an estimate, or anyone that has anything to do with that file, I tag the email associated with our claim file within our CRM. And it we kind of build these flood files to, we build them for litigation, you know, and maybe not for litigation, but we build them to identify our work that's been performed on the file, in case we have to, in case we have to fight for our fees, or we have to fight, for more money from the insurance carrier.
Right.
We try to log all of our steps along the way within our CRM system. That does a pretty good job. And it triggers us if we have to follow up on a sworn statement proof of loss, or if we submitted an estimate, to get done for a revision, and we haven't done that revision, we'll get a trigger in a few days. But
And what I love about that too, Alex, is that's going to, keep them accountable, and it's going to take out maybe the human error that could exist, right? You're in the hot zone, you're signing a lot of claims, you're working with a lot of people, you've got the team to do it, but who needs to do what by when? Well, if we outsource that to technology that's going to literally follow up in a proven workflow, first of all, we're going to hit our marks. Second of all, we're going to have a repeatable process. So when we find out something that works, we can edit the process so we do more of it, or we find that something wasn't as effective, we can edit that process so we do less of that. So, I really love that. And I love, you sent me one of the reports here and I had a quick chance to just look over it, but it was totally cool. It showed every time you touched that file, it showed how that file moved. And it's interesting, the reporting that we're doing, as a law firm, obviously, we're not going to share things that are potentially concerning client privilege, but a lot of our clients say, hey, please keep my public adjuster in the loop, or please keep my roofer or general contractor in the loop. We actually do a nice report that shows the last time the file was touched by our law firm, and that's always within a week. And the reason we show it is we want to show people that that we're accountable to them. We're
Exactly.
working your file. You're not hiring us and we're throwing it in a paper stack and hey, someone might get to it. We're proactively pushing. We walk the walk, we talk the talk, and we're holding ourselves accountable to it, but we're also showing you that we're doing it. And I would challenge anyone, roofer, PA out there, to show me another law firm that does that. Now, we do work on larger losses. We work with more sophisticated people and people that we're willing to invest this way. A lot of these law firms, unfortunately, they're kind of like the settlement mill approach, or maybe they're younger guys trying to figure it out, and they just take on a small caseload and they'll call you personally. But circling back, without these processes and systems, and if you want to run a real business, it's going to be impossible. And I've done this business every which way, starting, on like a pure co-counsel platform, and then this, and then that, and where, we were working with paper and just emails and trying to keep track. And then we moved to rudimentary CRMs. I'm talking about 12 years ago. Then things improve. And now what we've got now is auto exporting data. We've got dynamic dashboards. I can jump in, look at a scorecard. I see how our attorneys are working. We see how we can track the staff movement in these files to see who our rock stars are, who the people who, maybe need some more incentivizing or training. So we've just taken this to the next level, and it's been based on, good, smart processes, but in large part, the leverage provided by technology, just like you're talking about with CRMs and workflows that are plotted out, that make sure people are hitting their marks. So that's awesome, Alex. My hat's off to you for what you've created. And we're at about 30 minutes now. So what I'd love to do, Alex, is, just kind of introduce, how people can get in touch with you guys and kind of wrap up for today. But I do want to have you on as we go through this process. I think it's really good, and I think it's helpful and important for people. This talk is November 21st, right? So we're X amount of days from the storm. When we jump on another couple weeks, we're going to be that much further down the process, and we'll have some different insights to share. So Alex, with all that being said, first off, I'd like to thank you for jumping on with me today. You're the man, you're the local man, you're living it, and you're helping people out every day, and I know that. Because I see you, we're buddies, we follow each other on social media, and we're checking in on the phone, and you're always hustling. So I really respect that.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
And it's your home, man. So love that. Here's a quick chance for you to kind of introduce yourself and do like a little sign off. Where can people find you is what I always ask people. Where can they find you? And are you happy to talk to people, even if they're maybe not ready to move forward, or they just have some questions? Is that something you're willing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody can reach me at, yourpropertyadjuster.com on our website. My phone number is 727-320-7711. But yeah, typically if you go to yourpropertyadjuster.com, our information's on there. I'm happy to take calls anytime, if it's a good question, if it's a bad question, I'm happy to answer any question, so it doesn't, I don't require, an agreement to answer some question. If you have a question, if you feel like you're being underpaid or you've been denied, I'm happy to answer the phone and help anybody out in the whole state of Florida.
That's awesome, man. I just typed that in yourpropertyadjuster.com, double check, make sure I got it right. But hopefully people will reach out. I think the service you provide is really valuable. I know your character, I know the way that you work, and I have no hesitation recommending you. As a matter of fact, I recommended you to a colleague this morning. And I'm back and forth, West Coast, East Coast, as you know, and hopefully next time we'll be able to do this maybe live from your beautiful office there. And so really appreciate you coming on today and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate all the work you do and all the advice you give us and the help you've helped our firm with. So it goes hand in hand. So I really appreciate the time that you've given me on the line today, and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, terrific, Alex. That's, we're doing it to help just like you, man. We're in these communities. So great. So we'll wrap up now. I encourage anyone with questions about flood claims or wind claims. Obviously, today's discussion really focused more on flood claims. But if you have any questions about wind claims, Alex is the man on that. That's almost, it seems like, that's kind of the meat and potatoes of public adjusting. So this flood claim stuff is kind of evolving out of that. That's why we focused on that. But Alex and his firm absolutely rock and roll on hurricane and windstorm claims as well. I know we're working on some big stuff together too, which is great. And we appreciate your trust in our firm. And, so keep doing what you're doing, buddy. We're going to log off now and we'll keep in touch.
All right. All right. Great.
All right,
Thanks,
cheers.
Dan. I appreciate it, man. Have a good week.
You got it. Take
Thanks,
care.
Douglas.